I'm gonna make you a world with these two hands today. Put a love, memories and laughs in all that I create.
My latest adventure in hand lettering has me delving into the world of dipping pens. Now, I've only been using dipping pens for a few months, so I'm certainly not an expert. But I thought I'd share what I learned so far. First, a heads up. This tutorial doesn't cover traditional calligraphy. That's a fine art with rules that take years to master. Instead, I'll demonstrate the more playful script style that is popular for invitations and decor. Let's start by talking about pens. If you go to your craft or art supply store, you'll see several varieties of calligraphy pens. Some are referred to as fountain pens and come with cartridges or large reservoirs to hold ink. Although these can be fun to play with, they're really more of a novelty item compared to traditional dipping pens. Fountain pens will severely limit your ink options and are difficult to keep clean. The ink in these pens are rarely waterproof and tend to fade over time. So my suggestion is to skip those and instead choose a nib holder with replaceable nibs. These are pretty inexpensive. You can buy a 2-pack of nibs for around $3, or a complete kit with several nibs for around $10. When you take a closer look, you'll notice a metal plate on the back of the nib. This is the ink reservoir, which allows the nib to hold a bit of extra ink so you won't have to re-ink as often. You'll see that there are a lot of different sizes and types of nibs. Some are very slightly slanted, and these are probably the easiest for getting started with script lettering. Finer nibs are best for small letters. As far as ink goes, you can experiment with all sorts of mediums, such as acrylic with water or watercolor paints. But my favorite is India ink, which is very dark and smooth. You can also buy calligraphy ink, but this is really better for those fountain pens we talked about, and it's quite watery and pale compared to India ink. I recommend placing the bottle in a stable container to prevent tipping. I realize this is called a dipping pen, but you'll get better results if you refrain from dipping the whole nib in ink. Instead, use an eyedropper or a small paintbrush to place the ink inside the reservoir. This minimizes blotting and over-inking. Alright, let's talk about how to hold the pen. The key to calligraphy is maintaining the proper pen angle. Generally speaking, the nib should remain at the same angle throughout the entire process. To see what I mean, draw a clock. 3 o'clock is a straight 90-degree angle. I prefer to hold my pen at about a 30-degree angle, or somewhere around 4 o'clock. Watch the nib of the pen as I write. It remains at a constant angle even when writing words at a slant. Now let's do some line practice. White cardstock works well for this. You can buy a large pack for around $4 at Walmart. For more important pieces, choose a stiffer paper like Strathmore Bristol. Hold the pen at a 30-degree angle and draw a series of ones and dashes. Whenever you make a vertical stroke, press down to increase the width of the line. Horizontal strokes should lightly graze the paper. Keep writing until you begin to run out of ink. When you start to run out, the nib will feel scratchy against the paper and become streaky. Practice this a few times so you get a feel for how much ink your nib holds. It's best if you can refill your nib right before it runs out of ink, but it takes a while to get the hang of it. Take a closer look at your lines. If you're holding the pen at the proper angle, the ends of the stroke will be slightly slanted. Okay, now let's make some curves with flourishes. Play around with the amount of pressure you apply until you achieve the effect you like. Next, let's try some letters. I came up with my own flourish-style alphabet that I've practiced and practiced until it feels as natural to me as my own handwriting. I'd encourage you to experiment with your own style, but you're welcome to practice with my alphabet. I've made a free PDF that you can print and trace as you get a feel for writing script. Remember, graze the paper lightly as you make horizontal strokes and press down as you make vertical strokes. When it comes to ascenders, or the tall lines, you can choose which direction you would like the flourish to extend. If the letter is at the beginning of the word, I'll extend it to the right so it hangs over the word. If the letter is towards the back, I make it extend to the left. Look for areas where crossbars, the horizontal strokes in the middle of some letters, might connect. It adds interest when words interact with each other. For example, the R in the word red can descend and do double duty as the letter L in flash. You may also want to experiment with variations in letter sizing and placement. The word experiment has a different vibe when it's written straight and fairly uniform than when it's written in a more free and loose style. The great thing about this style of calligraphy is that it doesn't have to be precise to look pretty. When you're finished writing, remember to always wash your nibs with water. If you happen to have ink that dried in a nib, you can buy a cleanser that will remove permanent ink, but water will do the job if you clean your nibs right away. Script looks lovely on envelopes, announcements, and wall hangings.
Don't feel afraid to innovate. Don't miss a chance to be creative. Don't. Try this at home. Try this at home.
Hand lettering with dipping pens is an inexpensive and satisfying hobby. If you're interested in additional tutorials as I learn more about calligraphy, please leave a comment and let me know. To see more of my hand lettering samples, follow @MadeByMarzipan on Instagram. To print my Flourish alphabet tracing sheet, visit my website madebymarzipan.com and search for Flourish Alphabet.
Try this at home.